Okay, good day, class. How are you? So I hope that you are enjoying at home. You are enjoying your semester, and I hope that you are preparing your midterm examinations. Actually, this week is the midterm examination week, but our exams will be pushed through next week. Okay, so in this discussion, this will be included in the exam. Okay, so you have to watch this and review this lesson in order to answer the questions. Okay, and also I hope that you are um, encouraged to be vaccinated. I hope that majority of you are already vaccinated at your respective places, and if you're not yet vaccinated, so please do so, because it will help the country, and also it will help your loved ones. It will protect you, and it will really contribute significantly to the slow opening of the country, of the economy, so that we can have a more can be more open to the economy will be opened, and also your you can travel to other places, not really that um, to anywhere, but also we can really go to other places, and uh, yeah, there will be ease of restrictions that you can really experience if we are if majority of the populations are vaccinated. Okay, so as for now, you have to be safe at home, and you have to be protected as well also. Okay, so just continue uh, practicing social distancing and wash your hands thoroughly when you uh, went back to your house after going out for groceries, for any errands that your mother or you have to do outside. Okay, that's a simple reminder from your teacher. Okay, today we will be discussing about the lesson 3 in the module 2, which is the continuous culture. So we have already tackled about the lesson 1, which is the batch fermentation process. The second is the fed batch culture. So for the review of the batch fermentation culture, so it is a simple process for the fermentation in which the microorganisms will undergo 4 phases of growth. Okay, the lag phase, it will be the phase that has the microorganisms are still adjusting to the new environment after it has been inoculated to the fresh medium. So there is no significant increase of the cell density, but there is still growth of the cells, but there is no significant increase of the cell density because of that adjustment to the new environment. Okay, and for the exponential phase, this will be the time that the microorganisms really consumed heavily the nutrients or the substrates that are in the medium. Okay, and also through binary fission, that's the process of the cell division of the microorganism. So it is they are actively dividing. That's why it's called exponential phase or the log phase. So the microorganisms are actively dividing, and also it produces lots of primary metabolites such as enzymes, proteins, and other um, metabolites that are needed for their growth and metabolism. Okay, that's the log phase. After that, it will experience a stationary phase in which cell concentration is equals to the concentration of the concentration of the cells that are dying. Okay, the cells dividing is equal to the cells dying. So that's the stationary phase. There's still growth, and the concentration of the substrates are already decreasing because was already consumed during the stationary phase. And after that, the stationary phase, there's so-called now the deceleration phase, or the uh, deceleration phase, or the death phase of the microorganisms. So the the cells the cells dying is greater than the cells dividing. So because of the exhaustion of the substrates by the microorganisms, there is now no available substrates that can utilize the microorganisms. So they are slowly dying already. And after that, so the fermentation will stop there, and of course, in the dying phase, there is now the secondary metabolites are really produced greater. There is an increase of the production of the secondary metabolites rather than the primary metabolites. Okay, that's the batch fermentation process. And also for the fed batch culture, it is still similar with the batch fermentation process, but there is an extension of the fermentation, okay, because of the uh, uh, continuous supply of the substrate substrate at a constant rate or at a constant volume, so that there is an extension of the production of the product. Okay, so that's the uh, summary of the concepts of the types of fermentation or the processes. Okay, so let us now proceed to the continuous culture. Okay, at the end of this lesson, you will understand the concepts and principles of the continuous culture. Second is to determine the microbial growth kinetics of the continuous culture. And then third, to explain the uses, the advantages and disadvantages of the continuous culture. Let us now define or characterize the continuous culture. So unlike with the batch and the fed batch culture, so the continuous culture is quite unique with the two because there is a continuous addition of the fresh media to the fermentation broth, and then while the unused nutrients are continuously removed, there is input of the substrate, and there is also the recovery or the separation of the unused nutrients. So it is employed continuously. Okay, so that is why it is called continuous culture. Okay, the exponential growth in the batch culture may be prolonged by the addition of the fresh medium to the vessel. So here, class, there is no in the feed batch culture and the continuous culture, there is no growth phases that will undergo by the microorganisms because of this intervention, because of this technique that are employed, such that the fed in the fed batch process, there's a continuous adding of the nutrients, while there is no separation of the unused nutrients, while in the continuous culture, there is a constant rate of adding of fermentation media, and also there is continuously removing of the unused nutrients. So the microorganisms will not undergo a different phases because it will maximize uh, the exponential phase or the maximum growth rate of the microorganisms. That is why the exponential growth is prolonged in this continuous culture. Okay, it is by adding the fresh medium to the vessel, so that the growth can be maintained for a long duration. Okay, the medium has been designed such that growth is substrate limited and not toxin limited. Okay, so it depends upon the uh, the 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 substrate availability, and it is not it is ensured in the continuous culture that the unused nutrients are continuously removed along with the toxin compounds that are produced. So um, the the intervention or the limitation of the fed batch culture is already intervened in this continuous culture. So there is no there is no limitation in this continuous culture. Okay, it's not already dependent upon the accumulation of toxins. Okay, that is the advantages of the continuous culture. So the added medium displays an equal volume of culture from the vessel. Okay, so there is an equilibrium of the medium concentration and the volume of the culture vessel. So it is constantly maintained. Now, if the medium is fed continuously to such a culture at a suitable rate, a steady state is achieved eventually. So that the result will be there will be a formation of new biomass by the culture, and it is balanced by the loss of cells from the vessel. So along with this um, suitable rate of the medium, okay, the steady state is achieved. Okay, so the new biomass is balanced with the loss of cells from the vessel because there is a continuous also removing of the unused nutrients. Okay, so the new biomass produced is equal to the cells removed or the cells lost in the vessel. That's the steady state that is achieved in the continuous culture technique. So under the steady state, the specific growth rate is controlled by the dilution rate. So the dilution rate is the concentration of the cells. Okay. This is the continuous culture illustration, which is the flow rate 1 is equal to the flow rate 2. So when there is a feedstock vessel that is added into the fermentation medium class, so there is a new formation of the biomass. So the concentration of the cells that are newly divided or newly produced, the biomass itself, meaning the cell, when I say biomass, it is the cells class. So there is also a continuous removing of the unused nutrients. So and then there is also a loss of the cells that are also removed. So there is an achievement of the balance of the new formation of the biomass and also new formation, the loss of the concentration of the cells. That is why the microorganisms are still at a maximum specific growth rate because of this technique. Okay, the flow rate 1 is equals to the flow rate 2. Okay, there is also a different kinds of the culture system in the continuous process, in which number one it is called the chemostat, then second one is the turbidostat. Okay, what is the chemostat? Okay, the chemostat is the growth of cells that are controlled by the availability of the growth chemical component of the medium. Okay, so it is the monitoring controls of this is the growth chemical of the medium. Okay, a particular chemical of the medium. While the turbidostat is the concentration of cells in the culture is kept constant. So how it is controlled by the flow of the medium, that the turbidity of the culture is kept within certain narrow limits. So there is a probe for the turbidity in the bioreactor, the turbidity probe that really tells or indicates how turbid the cells, or it also indicates the concentration of the cells in the vessel, because diba? Because the microorganisms will keep on producing and also growing. So there is the indicator of the presence of your appearance of your microbial vessel or the bioreactor is viscous, is increasingly viscous, right? So that's one of the indicators that the microorganisms are growing in the culture. So when in this continuous process, so the the control of the in the turbidostat is based on the turbidity of the culture. It should be maintained, okay? And the chemostat here in the unlike the chemostat that the growth of cells is controlled by the ability of the growth chemical component. So it's not just the whole component of the chemical, but a particular, it could be carbon, nitrogen, or it could be the micronutrients or the macronutrients of the microorganisms, but that are really significant for the production, for the growing of the microorganisms. So that's how chemostat and turbidistat is classified in the continuous process. So this is now the kinetics of the continuous culture. Okay, as you can see that if we want to put it into an equation, the flow of the medium into the vessel is related to the volume of the vessel by the term of the dilution rate. Okay, the flow into the medium, into the cell, is related to the volume of vessel, okay, by the term of the dilution rate. Okay, the D as defined as the dilution rate is equals to the flow rate over the volume of the total vessel. Okay, so uh, again, the dilution rate is equals to the flow rate over to the volume of the vessel in the media. Okay, so the net change in cell concentration over a time period may be expressed as, okay, the grow. It could be like this. Okay, the dx, the change of the growth rate, I know, the change of the substrate is x over the change of time is growth minus output. Okay, and the output is that when the fermentation vessel is, when there is a removal uh, of the unused nutrients from the fermentation vessel. Okay, so after that, the change or dx, the change over the change of time is equal to the um, specific growth rate times the substrate minus the dilution rate times the substrate. So that's how it is, the net change of the cell concentration over time. So there's now the, and growth is the specific growth rate, which is represented by U in mu, it could be like that, and also it's also represented by the substrate concentration, and then the output is represented by the dilution rate, which is here, times the substrate concentration. Okay, during the steady state, okay, the rate of cell growth is equal to the rate of cell being displaced or washed out, diba? As I have said kanina na, when there is addition, then there is new formation, the biomass that are produced because of the fresh medium that is added in the bioreactor. There is also an equal loss of the cell concentration that is being removed, okay, from the vessel. So here, the specific growth rate, which is represented by U, times the substrate concentration is equals to the dilution rate times the substrate concentration. And the specific growth rate is equals to the dilution rate. It's constantly removed from the vessel. Under steady state conditions, specific growth rate is controlled by the dilution rate. Continuous culture only operate below maximum specific growth rate, meaning the dilution is greater than the specific or the maximum specific growth rate. It should be controlled that the dilution rate is lower, not is less than the specific maximum specific growth rate. These are rates. Okay, so as you can see that it is ours, uh, these R's, okay, per R. Then the volume is, yeah. So that's how um, the continuous culture are being discussed or explained. So the dilution rate may be used to control growth rate of the culture because of this steady state na steady state equation of that is achieved in the continuous culture. The chemostat refers to the growth of cells controlled by by the availability of the growth limiting nutrients or chemical in the medium, as what I have discussed kanina. So, as a summary of this continuous culture, the input rate is equals to the output rate, meaning there is still a constant volume of the um, production of the product by the microorganism. So, and there is also a constant volume of the total volume in the bioreactor. Okay, the flow rate is selected to give steady state growth, which is the growth rate is equals to the dilution rate. Now, when there is when the dilution rate is greater than the growth rate, okay, so the dilution rate is really the rate at which there is now a removal of the unused nutrients and the cells, okay. So when the dilution rate is greater than the growth rate, meaning the culture washes out, meaning there is a um, more cells that are removed in the fermentation. So uh, if the dilution rate is less than the growth rate, okay, that only means that the culture overgrows, meaning there are many, there is an increased production of the microorganisms in the fermentation vessel, other than how the dilution rate are being, or the cell concentrations are removed from the vessel, okay. If the dilution rate is equal to the growth rate, that only means that there is a steady state culture. Okay, what happens to the product when these things are observed in the fermentation vessel? Okay, the dilution, if the dilution rate is greater than the growth rate, the culture washes out, meaning that the product are not uh, the increase, there is no constant production of the product. There is a great decrease of the production of the product by the microorganisms because the cell concentrations are washed, the majority or the significant concentration of the cells are washed out. Okay, so if the dilution rate is greater, is less than, or yeah, is less than the growth rate. Okay, so there is a culture overgrowing in the fermentation vessel. So it should be that the fed or the substrates are there is a fast or high consumption of the substrate in the fermentation vessel. Okay, so that's how it is done because there is an overgrowth of the culture. Now, if it's um, in the steady state culture, there is a constant production of the this constant production uh, of the product. And also, I would like to add that in if the dilution rate is less than the growth rate, so there is overgrowing of the culture, and there is also a tendency plus that there is now the toxin accumulation, that there is an increased toxin accumulation because there is an overgrowing culture in the vessel. Okay, that's how the effect of and there is no balance of the dilution rate on the growth rate in the continuous culture. Okay, so the product is constantly harvested from the outflow. Okay, and then the stable chemostat cultures can operate continuously for a week or months. That's the continuous process culture. Hindi lang pala days ang sa batch fermentation process, you can have it for 2 days, 3 days, but here in the continuous process, you can really operate it in a week or a month because of the constant feeding of the microorganism and also constant removing of the toxins and unused nutrients, because that's one of the disadvantages in the feed batch culture. It is limited to the toxin accumulation as the microorganisms the microorganism ages, so it will have a inhibition to the production of the particular product. Okay, the substrate determine the dilution rate. So it should be that there is still constant, um, there is this calculation of the substrate to be fed in the fermentation vessel and also the dilution rate. So now the substrate concentration, if the substrate concentration depleted below level that support the growth rate, there will be events that take place. Okay, again, if the substrate concentration is already low in the low level that support the growth rate of the cells will be less than the dilution rate. Okay, and they will be washed out of the vessel at a rate greater than they are being produced, resulting in a decrease in biomass concentration. Now again, if the substrate concentration is depleted, it's already exhausted below the level. Okay, so there is now what happens to the growth rate? There is a decrease of the growth rate, the maximum growth rate. Okay, so the dilution rate, it will be washed out. The growth rate of the cells will be less than the dilution rate, and they will be washed out of the vessel at a rate greater than that they are being produced. Okay, so because of that, there is a decrease in biomass concentration. Okay, so because there is no additional concentration of the substrate are being fed into the microorganisms, okay, the growth rate, so the cells are washed out also because of the removal of the toxin, the unused nutrients and cells. Okay, so there is constant also removal of that. So there is now the decrease in biomass concentration that results to the decrease of the production of the product. The substrate concentration in this vessel will rise because fewer cells are left in the vessel to consume it. Okay, so there is also ano po, the consent, the because the cells are being washed out from the fermentation medium. So of course there is now the microorganisms have much availability of the substrate to be to consume in order that to have that to achieve a specific growth rate. But then there is still a decrease in biomass concentration. The increased substrate concentration in the vessel will result in the cells growing at a rate greater than the dilution rate. Okay, and biomass concentration will increase. The steady state will be reestablished. So that's how also one of the advantages in the continuous culture, that it will have a the substrate concentration will really have a significant factor in the product, in the achievement of the steady state steady state condition in the bioreactor. Okay, I hope that it is clear with the class. Is it clear? Okay, let's proceed. Now let us proceed to the theoretical advantage or the advantages of the continuous culture. Okay, let us enumerate this. The constant condition at steady state, it has a constant productivity, and also the production of the product is always at maximum. Okay, so it will achieve a maximum specific growth rate that results in the maximum production of the product. And another advantage rather, it can be operated for a very long time. So unproductive time would be minimal. So the continuous culture will not undergo the microbial growth, will not undergo in the same process of the batch fermentation, but it will really have it will have an acceleration to the log phase, in which is exponential phase of the microorganisms, and it will not undergo the stationary phase and the deceleration phase, meaning it will maintain the exponential phase because it maintains the specific growth rate of the microorganisms in a very long time. Okay, the process control is constant, allowing process of automation. Of course, it is be automated by computers so that you will have a you will not you will there is a constant feeding of the bioreactor and also constant removal of the unused nutrients. And it is really suited for the metabolite productivity. Okay, the secondary metabolites such as antibiotic production. So, for the chemostat classification of the fermentation of the continuous culture, the strain lost or there is a strain lost or there is a strain degeneration. Okay, for example, for the recombinant plasmid or mutant, so it is really there is a risk factor for that uh, if we are using a recombinant microorganisms, so there could be mutation and there is a decrease of the performance of the microorganisms during a long period of that continuous culture. And also in the chemostat, where is that a particular chemical compound are dependent or um, have a significant factor for the specific growth rate of the microorganisms, which is being fed increasingly. So there is also a risk factor that it will produce a mutation. The industrial strain grows inefficiently with a low specific growth rate and also but have a uh, I forgot the KS value, but I will search that class. So the mutated strain changed to wild type in order to have better growth capacity. So there's a risk of mutation when you use recombinant microorganisms. The wild type will overgo the culture and the industrial strain will be washed out. Okay, so that's um, the disadvantage of the chemostat kind of cultural fermentation, continuous cultural fermentation. Okay, another problems in the chemostat, there will be operational problems. The culture mixing is not homogeneous. Could be that the growth in the wall of the fermenter can make the problem worse. Okay, so it could be that when there is mixing of the particular compound in the fermentation vessel, a fresh fermentation in the vessel, so there is a di ba ang sparger ang uh, mag-distribute or the mag-mix evenly in order for the microorganisms to have a proper distribution of the availability of the nutrients, no? So, wala siya nga, it could be that there be no, there is no homogeneous mixing inside the fermentation vessel. Okay, that's one of the operational problems. And it could be also that there are microorganisms that will attach to the fermenter or the bioreactor. So it could be that it will accumulate in the sides of the fermenter. And also, one of the disadvantages is the contamination that of course, there is a constant feeding of the nutrients in the bioreactor, so there is a risk of having contamination from the outside environment. Okay, and then also there is also a risk of contamination because there is also a removal of the unused nutrients. Okay, so another problem is the equipment reliability. I've not yet seen or observed a fed batch um, fed batch fermentation and continuous fermentation, but I only experienced a batch culture fermentation process in a particular bioreactor talaga. So yeah, I guess there is a something technicality to the equipment. So we have to purchase a um, fitted equipment for the particular microorganisms that should be, or the product that should be produced. Okay. So that's the disadvantages of the chemostat. As a summary, there can be the strain loss or strain degradation. There can be operational problems, and there is the risk of contamination and the equipment reliability. Now, the application in the continuous culture class is for the biomass production. If you want to use biomass for a particular, if you want to produce microbial starter for a particular product to be fermented. So we can use this continuous culture because it will really have a constant rate of producing the biomass and also the product itself. Okay, and because the continuous culture is growth associated product, so it could be that you can produce the ethanol, the citric acid, uh, by continuous culture. The citric acid is a secondary metabolite, by the way. So, produced by Aspergillus oryzae, Aspergillus niger could be, yeah. So that's how the continuous culture is being advantageous to these secondary metabolites. Yeah. Um, Yeah, it's also ethanol and ethanol and citric acid are primary metabolites. And also, it is not suitable for non-growth associated or secondary metabolites, is the antibiotic. So, because always, um, it is always at an exponential phase, so it is advantage to the production of the primary metabolite. But when you want to have uh, when you produce antibiotics or secondary metabolites, it is suitable for the fed batch fermentation because it has an extended phase of the uh, fermentation process, which is in the stationary phase. Okay. That's how the application of the continuous culture. So for the conclusion of the fermentation process, now that the fermentation process is over, the fermentation broth containing the cells and the extracellular media is removed from the production fermented. So after the fermentation process, there is now the harvesting, and it will complete the upstream process of the fermentation. And after the cells are harvested, the recombinant protein or the product itself is not just the recombinant protein, but the product itself should be separated from the cells that produced them. Okay, this is now ups, the downstream processing of the bioprocess, in which we'll tackle all the more in the second semester because that's the main focus of the INBT122, the bioprocess 2. Okay, this is accomplished through the downstream process of purification. There are rigorous process of fermentation, of downstream processing that has to be employed during in that particular area of the bioprocess. We will tackle we will tackle more of that. It will be tackled more of that in the second semester. Okay, that's how the continuous culture um, that is characterized or that is employed, and also the advantages and the disadvantages. Okay, so I hope that you have understood the two types of uh, the fermentation processes. First one is the batch culture fermentation. The second is the fed batch, and the third is the continuous culture. Okay, so if you have questions or clarifications, please don't hesitate to chat in the group chat or personally message me through FB Messenger, or also you can email me in my DSC email, and also you can also chat down discussion questions in the DSC. Okay, so please don't hesitate in order for have a clear understanding of the three types of the fermentation processes. Okay, so for the learning task class, so you have to give other fermentation products that are produced by continuous culture fermentation. Okay, and then second is to research about the aeration and agitation of the different culture processes. Then explain the functions of aeration and agitation in the fermentation process. Okay, I've already discussed this with you in the the first discussion, yeah, just the parts of the fermentation process. So that's the learning task, and you have to accomplish it 3 weeks from now, class. Okay. Okay, I'll just post this post test in the VSUE so that you can really have a you can really review this one. Okay, it is not graded, so it is just a post test for the lesson for the module 2. So we are done with the module 2 class, and the module 1 and module 2 are the uh, coverage of the exam for the midterm. Okay, thank you so much, class, for watching this video, and I hope that you have learned a lot for the bioprocesses. Thank you, and glad thank you and God bless. And before anything else, for this ends, I would like to share this with you in James 1:5. If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. Okay, so if we are at the end of ourselves and we are really we are we are really struggling, or we are really um, having troubles in our semester, in our subjects, and also in our lives, personality, in our inward troubles and battles. So we have to ask wisdom from the Lord, because He has that all wisdom that can solve all the problems in our lives. I tell you, class, and believe me and believe God that He can solve all your problems, and He can really have that. He can make you secure in your life, that no matter what happens, no matter what the future holds, class, you will be safe in His hands. And of course, it will really give us a future. It will give us a hope. And this hope will make us more positive in life, and more persevering now, because there is something to look forward to tomorrow and the future. Yeah, that's how we can move forward in this pandemic, in this uh, online class that we are setting in, and also the problems that we are encountering in the daily basis. And if we are um, having problems with our families and relationships. So you have to remember that you have to ask the Lord for wisdom, so that He has all the answers of our questions. And it also points us that we are just humans, and we need God in our lives. We need a higher being in our lives. So it humbles us to know that we are not that we are no better persons. We have to grow more uh, as our lives unfold here on earth. Okay, and I really encourage you, class, to ask the Lord and to have a relationship with God, because that's that's the most important relationship that you can have in this world. So thank you so much, class, for watching, and I hope you have a good weekend, and I hope that you are preparing for the midterm examination. Thank you so much, and God bless.